Every pharaoh who ever ruled Egypt wore the same divine weapon on his forehead. It began as an apology. Somewhere at the dawn of creation, a wound between father and daughter reshaped the world in a way almost nobody who tells this story ever stops to notice. And by the time that wound closed, something existed on the ground beneath them that no god had ever meant to create. If you think this is a story about a father asking for forgiveness, wait until you see what he actually had to give up to earn it, and what his daughter left behind without either of them ever realizing it. What did one wounded goddess leave scattered across the earth without meaning to? Why would two lovers be torn apart by their own grandfather? And how could a curse that closed every single day of the year still find a crack to break through? To understand how one god's fury became humanity's first breath, we have to go back to the exact moment the Eye of Ra could no longer hold back her tears. Yeah, before we go there, if you're new to this channel, this is where the gods of the ancient world get told as they were meant to be told, not as footnotes in a textbook, but as the living, breathing, often merciless stories they always were. Subscribing costs you nothing, and it means you won't miss what any of these gods do next. The Eye of Ra wept, not the quiet tears of sorrow, but the burning tears of humiliation, of a creation cast aside by her own creator, replaced the moment she was gone too long searching for the lost. She had done everything Atum asked of her. She had gone alone into a chaos that had no shape, no light, no promise of return, to find Shu and Tefnut, his missing children, and bring them home. She had succeeded, and in the time it had taken her to succeed, Atum, believing her lost forever, had grown himself a second eye to take her place. There is no wound sharper than discovering you have been replaced by the very one you served. Her tears fell not as water, but as something heavier, something carrying centuries of grief compressed into a single moment. And where they struck the earth, the ground itself seemed to shudder, as if the world had felt her pain before it had ever felt anything else. Something stirred beneath that trembling surface, small, fragile, mortal, in a way nothing before them had ever been. They rose from the dust the Eye of Ra had soaked in her own sorrow, blinking against a sky they had no word for yet, standing on legs that had not existed a moment before, breathing air that no living thing had ever breathed. They were not gods, and they would never become gods. They were the first humans, and they had not been planned, designed, or spoken into being by any divine decree. They were the accidental children of a mother who had only meant to cry. They did not know, in that first moment, that they were the only witnesses to a quarrel between two gods. They only knew the ground beneath them, still warm from the tears that had made it, and a silence in the world so total that even the wind had not yet been born to break it. There was no Shu yet to carry sound across a sky, because there was no sky yet to carry it across. There was only the earth, unformed and pressed flat beneath a darkness that had not yet been divided from anything, and the first humans standing within it, small and new, waiting for a world that had not finished being made around them. Like Ahina, Atum watched what his own carelessness had made. He had not intended to create a new form of life scattered weeping across his young world. He had only intended, in a moment of grief and fear, to replace something he believed gone. Now that belief lay exposed as a mistake, standing directly in front of him in the form of a furious, wounded, living eye, a being who had done everything right and been punished for it anyway. Atum understood, looking at her, that no apology spoken in mere words would be enough to close a wound this deep. A God who has replaced his own child does not earn forgiveness simply by asking for it. He needed to offer something no other being in all of creation would ever be permitted to hold. something that would prove, beyond any possible doubt, that she had never truly been replaceable at all. He reached for her, gently, the way one reaches for something that might still choose to strike. He lifted her from the ground where she still wept, and he raised her to his own forehead and placed her there. In that instant, the Eye of Ra was transformed. She became the Uraeus, the rearing cobra, coiled and eternally ready to strike down any threat that dared approach the throne, a crown that no ruler of Egypt would ever wear their power without for the next 3,000 years. It was not a punishment disguised as an honor, and it was not a cage disguised as a crown. It was the highest seat Atum had left within his power to give, closer to his own thoughts than any other being in the universe, fused permanently to the very center of his authority. The Eye of Ra, her fury finally spent, accepted the place he offered her. Father and daughter were reconciled, their bond sealed now in gold and venom and eternal vigilance. A partnership neither of them would ever have to question again. But the humans she had wept into existence in her rage did not vanish along with her forgiveness. They remained scattered across the earth below, small and mortal and utterly unaware of the divine argument that had given them life. Permanent proof that a single wound between two gods could leave behind an entire species that would go on to outlive them both.
What is this?
If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for. Hit like before you carry on. It takes a second, and it's the only reason channels like this get to keep telling stories nobody else is telling. There's still an entire second half of this myth waiting. From Atum's own being, two new gods had already taken form before the Eye's return. Shu, god of air, dry and restless and endlessly moving, and Tefnut, goddess of moisture, cool and yielding and patient. They were the first divine pair born directly of Atum, and where Shu's dry breath met Tefnut's dampness, something new could finally begin to take shape in a universe that had, until then, known only gods and grief. Together, they conceived two children, and the manner of that conception mattered less than what followed. When those children were born, they did not emerge as two separate beings reaching toward one another across some open distance. They emerged already entwined, locked in an embrace so complete that no space, no light, no single breath of air existed anywhere between them. Geb was the earth itself in that first moment. Solid, patient, unyielding, the promise of ground before ground had ever been needed. Nut was the sky, vast, dark, endless, the promise of a ceiling over a world that did not yet have walls. Brother and sister, and in the same breath, husband and wife. The instant they were born, they wrapped themselves around each other and did not let go, as though some part of them already understood how brief this closeness would be permitted to last. Their embrace should have remained a quiet, private thing. The beginning of a love story between two young gods discovering the shape of the world through each other's bodies. Instead, it became a problem the young universe could not afford to leave unsolved. As long as Geb and Nut stayed wrapped around one another, there was no room between earth and sky for anything else to exist at all. No space for the humans the Eye of Ra had wept into being to stand upright beneath an open sky. No room for the sun to rise, cross, and set upon a horizon that did not yet exist. No room for a single star to hang suspended in a sky that was, for now, still pressed flush against the ground it loved. Atum gave the order, and there was no god in the young cosmos who could have carried it out except one. Shu, their own father, would have to be the one to tear his children apart. Shu did not want this task. He loved his son and his daughter the way only a father who has just watched them born entwined in each other's arms can love them. And he understood with total clarity exactly what he was about to break. But he understood too the alternative he had been shown. A universe sealed shut forever in a single, unbroken embrace. A world that could never breathe, could never hold a horizon, could never make room for anything but two gods locked together for all eternity. So Shu placed his hands against his son and against his daughter, and with a heaviness no one else in creation could have carried, he pushed. The separation was neither swift nor gentle. Geb's body pressed downward beneath the weight of Shu's hands, sinking into solid form, becoming the ground itself. The earth that would, in time, carry every living thing that would ever walk, crawl, or root itself into its surface. Not arched backward and upward, her body stretching into the vault of the heavens, rising higher and higher, until she hung suspended far above her brother, held apart from him by her own father's unmoving arms. In that terrible instant, she was closer to Geb than any two beings in the universe had ever been to one another, close enough to see every detail of the face she loved, and yet permanently, unreachably beyond his touch. Between them, holding that unbearable distance open with his own body, stood Shu himself, his very form becoming the air that now separated earth from sky, the space in which the first humans, born of the eye's tears, would come to live and breathe and build entire lives without ever knowing what it had cost to make room for them. Shu held that position not out of cruelty toward the children he loved, but because without him standing exactly there, without end, the entire world Atum had built would collapse back into the shapeless chaos it had only just risen from. Nut wept as she rose, and her tears were not the tears of a goddess accepting her fate quietly. She had been pregnant when Shu tore her from Geb's arms, carrying children conceived in that final desperate embrace before the separation that would now define the rest of her existence. When Ra learned of this, his fury was immediate, and it was absolute. A goddess pregnant with children he had never sanctioned, conceived in a union he had just forcibly and permanently ended by his own decree, was an insult to the order of creation itself. And Ra was not a god who let insults to his order stand unanswered. Ra pronounced a curse, and he did not speak it as a threat meant to frighten her into obedience. He spoke it as law, absolute and unbreakable the moment it left his mouth. Nut would never give birth on any single day of the calendar, not one day among the 360 that made up the entire turning of the Egyptian year. Every day already belonged to Ra. Every single hour of every one of them was already his to command, sealed under his authority since the moment the calendar itself had come into being. And he closed every one of those days to her, permanently, completely, without exception. It should have been the absolute end of Nut's hope. The calendar was whole, sealed from its first day to its very last, with no gap left unclaimed anywhere within it, no hour left unaccounted for, nowhere at all within the entire yearly cycle of the world for the children growing inside her to be born. She carried them regardless, day after day that was not hers to give birth in, feeling them grow within a body already stretched across the entire sky, already separated from the only being she had ever loved, now told that even her own children had nowhere in time to arrive. A curse spoken by the sun itself does not weaken with waiting. It only grows heavier, the longer the one who carries it is forced to wait beneath it. Nut, desperate and running out of paths forward, turned to Thoth, god of wisdom, keeper of the moon's slow and patient light, the one god in the young cosmos known for finding meaning in places no one else thought to look. She pleaded with him for a way out of a curse that had been built by design to leave none. Thoth did not offer her comfort, and he did not promise her anything at first. He simply listened to her in full, without interrupting. Then he began to search. not for a way to break Ra's word, because no god in creation held the power to unmake another god's decree once spoken, but for something Ra's word had simply never been written to account for. He found his answer not on the earth and not in the calendar itself, but in the sky above it, in the moon, who held its own store of light the way a miser holds coin, confident that nothing in the young cosmos could take it. Thoth approached it not with a plea, but with a game, a board marked out in squares, pieces carved from bone, the kind of contest gods settled disputes with when words alone would not do. The moon, certain of its own steady brilliance, agreed without hesitation. It had never lost anything it valued. It saw no reason tonight would be different. Thoth had not told Nut what he risked in offering this wager, because there was no way to tell her without also telling her what losing it would mean. If the moon kept its light, there would be no 5 days. If there were no 5 days, there would be no crack in Ra's decree, no gap in a calendar sealed shut from its first hour to its last. Nut would carry the children inside her for as long as a body could bear such a weight, and then longer than that, sealed forever inside a curse with no door left anywhere within it. Thoth thought of her, suspended alone in the sky where her own father had placed her, waiting on a game she could not see and had no way to help him win. And the thought sat in him like a stone he could not set down. The game turned slowly at first, move answering move, neither side yielding ground. Then it turned against Thoth. Pieces fell. The moon's light seemed to brighten with every exchange, certain now that this contest would end exactly the way every contest before it had ended. Thoth felt something close to fear. Not for himself. A god could not lose in the way flesh could lose, but for what his failure would cost someone who had already lost almost everything else. For a long moment, it looked as though Nut's last remaining path had just closed itself in front of her, one throw of the pieces at a time, and Thoth understood, with a clarity that frightened him more than the losing itself, that if this game ended the way it was currently ending, her children would simply never be born at all. Not delayed, not deferred, but erased from the possibility of existing forever, because a god who meant well had not been clever enough. Thoth did not panic, and he did not stop. He watched the board the way he watched everything, patiently, for as long as it took to find the one gap no one else would have noticed, holding the weight of what he stood to lose steady enough that it sharpened him instead of breaking his focus. And on the final move, with nothing left to lose and no second chance waiting behind it, he found it. The moon's light dimmed, just slightly, in the instant it understood what it had just handed over. Thoth had won, not by force and not by the moon's foolishness, but by refusing to stop looking for an opening until the very last possible moment allowed it to appear. With a mother and her unborn children hanging on whether he found it in time. As his prize, he claimed a portion of the moon's own light for himself, a small but real fraction of it, enough, if handled with sufficient patience, to forge something that belonged to no calendar Ra had ever sealed. Something that would exist entirely outside the boundaries of the year Ra had already closed against her. From that stolen light, patiently and deliberately, working in a silence no other god disturbed, Thoth built 5 new days. 5 days that did not belong to the 360 Ra had already cursed. 5 days that answered to no god's decree at all, for the simple reason that they had not existed at the moment that decree was spoken into law. Ra had closed every day of the year that existed when he spoke his curse. He had never imagined, and had never needed to imagine, a year that could quietly grow 5 new days it had not previously contained. Nut's curse remained exactly as absolute as Ra had ever spoken it. Not a single word of his decree had been broken, not one syllable undone. And yet, For the first time since Shu had torn her from Geb's arms and left her suspended alone in the sky, she felt the children within her stir, as 5 days that should never have existed opened silently before her, one by one, each one a door Ra's own law had never known to lock. And there was nothing left standing between Nut and the birth Ra had sworn, with the full weight of his power, would never come.